Hi everyone, this is Anthony O'Flynn coming to you live from the Sunshine Coast with an energy update for the equinox. It's the autumn equinox in the southern hemisphere and the spring equinox in the northern hemisphere. Equinox coming from the Latin equi meaning equal and nox meaning night, meaning equal night, and it's reference to the duration of the sun and the night and the day being of equal duration at this time. So when we consider the four cardinal points, the two equinoxes, two solstices, the equinox, this equinox is the most important of the four, and I'm going to explain to you why that is now. So that doesn't matter that it's the autumn equinox here in the southern hemisphere or the spring equinox in the northern hemisphere. What's significant about this is basically it's the astrological new year. So with it, equinox brings with the understanding that we are heading into a new year from an astrological point of view. The Gregorian calendar that was constructed by Pope Gregory is a highly inaccurate way of calculating time. And we have this understanding that now we are basically about to move into 0 degrees Aries, which is the astrological new year. Aries being the first sign of the zodiac. Even the symbol itself for the Aries is like a fountain in this way. It's the beginning. It's bringing everything that's fresh and new. And this will occur tomorrow night at 7:39 Queensland, 7:39 p.m. Queensland time, 20th of the 3rd. And that's in the maximum equinox. And the significance of maximum equinox, or the beginning of the equinox here, is that Sri Yukteswar, who was the guru of Paramahamsa Yogananda, who was a huge mystic, and if you read some of the literature by Yogananda, particularly the autobiography of a yogi, you'll come to the understanding pretty quickly that Yukteswar was a huge spiritual giant. I mean, this guy really was a titan. And he actually states, not in that book obviously, but in some of his writings, that 0 degrees Aries is the most powerful time of the year. Aries is a cardinal sign, so it's basically this beginning. It's the beginning of the impulse of this new, everything that's starting. So it is in this essence for the northern hemisphere, the spring. So it's the beginning, and it's very good to start new patterns, new habits, new practices, new projects, all these sorts of things. And it's probably no accident actually that there's major protests occurring around the world on this date, which is going to have a dramatic impact at an esoteric level, at an energetic level, which will really send shockwaves around the world, because it's held at a time of maximum impact. And also Aries being a cardinal sign, being a fire sign, having this enthusiasm, that will basically have quite a dramatic impact of what's going to occur around the world this weekend with the various protests there. So what's important to understand from that is that if you're considering a new pattern or a new practice, or starting something new, or basically turning over a new leaf, is that the equinox is a very good time to do it. The cardinal points all have their own significance, but this one being the 0 degree Aries, it really is quite a powerful time. So this is important to understand. So when we think about this precession of the equinoxes, it's moving basically from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius, which is a very slow duration. It's a slow process. And many of the new ages with this hysteria that occurred in December 2020 last year, claiming to signal the beginning of the age of Aquarius with the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, it's a configuration, it has significance, but when we take into account that the precession itself, it moves backwards, so we're moving away from Pisces into Aquarius, and then the next sign, of course, will be Capricorn. So they're the ages. But what's occurring here, which I'm going to spend some time in this energy update occurring, is beyond the precession of equinoxes, which is significant from an astrological point of view. It does have a power, it does have a function, but much of the hysteria and the hype around the precession of the equinoxes into the age of Aquarius, well, it comes from the place that Aquarius is a superior sign, a superior consciousness to Pisces, and that's very debatable. And then moving into the next age after that, we can compare then, is Capricorn going to be considered to be a superior sign, a superior consciousness to Aquarius? So a lot of people are actually having some very incorrect understandings of things here in terms of consciousness, in terms of precession. And the fact that precession actually moves only at 1 degree every 72 years approximately shows that this is a very slow process. So the hype and the hysteria that we saw, well, where are the fruits of that? That if we're entering the age of Aquarius, things have not really changed that much. And in fact, we can see that actually the dark agenda has been exposed and is moving forward even at rapid speed day by day, which I'll come to. So this means that we're talking about a different cosmology, which I'm going to refer to in this update, because there's just so many misunderstandings with what's occurring at a macro level now. So I'm going to attempt to try to insert some rational thought into what is being discussed in this arena of the Great Awakening, which is going to be the defining topic of this decade, obviously. But the real question is, what is occurring and why, and how's this going to show up? So the main thing to understand firstly is that the major astrological configuration of this year is actually the Saturn-Uranus square, which is going to be showing up as an extremely turbulent configuration, a very, very conflict-based cosmic signature. And this, because the orbs are not really moving very far apart, there's 3 exact squares this year. We've already had the first one, but because the orb is so tight, really it's going to be ongoing for all of this year. This is the defining signature, cosmic signature of 2021, is the Saturn-Uranus square. A lot of tension there, and obviously we're seeing that play out in our individual lives and also at a collective level. So really what we're talking about with the Great Awakening of humanity is not only a movement into the age of Aquarius, but this really is not really, from an astrological point of view, going to really show really big fruits until at the very earliest 2023, when Aquarius, when Pluto moves into Aquarius out of Capricorn. So this then also is only temporary, because then there's a retrograde movement by Pluto and will move back into Capricorn, and then won't stay into Aquarius until 2024. So Pluto, remember, is going to be having a mass impact on the collective. And always the motto with Pluto is it's moving at the speed of a glacier with the power of a tsunami. So when Pluto finally stays in Aquarius in 2024, that's when you're going to start to see all the Aquarian themes coming through stronger, although they are already starting to come through, particularly with things like technology, different forms of rebellion, new ways of thinking, all these Aquarian things, but the whole bohemian way, the unorthodox way of looking at things, all these sorts of things. So that's already showing up and has been for many years now. This is just the beginning of really what we're going to see transpire over the entire of this century. But what I'd really like to discuss and put some ideas out there in this energy update is the understanding of the cycles of time at a much broader and much bigger level, as noted in the Hindu tradition through the study of the yugas. Now, the yuga is basically a classification of time, and what we're actually experiencing is the end of a cosmic cycle. Now, because the information of the yugas mentioned in Indian texts such as Mahabharata and other texts, is that there is a lot of speculation and a lot of conjecture, and there's not a lot of consensus on the timing of the yugas. There's also not a lot of consensus on the structures of the yugas themselves. Now, I will perhaps in the future start to speak more in detail of the yugas, because this is going to become something that is very become like common knowledge actually when we move through this Great Awakening, because so many people will be trying to make sense of what is occurring. And by the way, my book on the Great Awakening is coming out soon. I know I've had a lot of hold-ups. People have been asking me, but it is coming out. It is coming out soon. So, the thing to understand with how the Hindus classify time, and they have cycles of time that go way beyond the years in terms of how we understand time. In our understanding and in Western astrology, it's pretty vast. And because it's so vast, there obviously is the room for discrepancies or errors or interpretation of information. But basically, the yugas are divided into four. And they are Kali, Treta, Dvapara, and Satya. Satya Yuga is the golden age. Kali Yuga is the age we're in now. Now, there's a lot of misunderstanding with what that means in terms of Kali, and people often refer to this Kali Yuga as the tantric goddess, the Indian tantric goddess, which is actually related to time itself. But this is a very common misunderstanding, because when we think of this wild Kali goddess, unchecked, it's actually incorrect interpretation of her consciousness, because it's a reference to the fact that time devours everything. It consumes everything. It is relentless. It is all-powerful. It is basically unstoppable. And in this way, time is not necessarily good or bad, but just that it's denoted in this way. And in fact, meditation with this tantric goddess is extremely exalted, extremely high states of consciousness, extremely elevated, particularly at the level of Vishuddha chakra and crown chakra, and this connection to time through Vishuddha chakra. But in the Sanskrit alphabet, there's 16 vowels. There's 2 A's and 2 I's. So when we think of the word Kali, it's not a reference to the tantric goddess. When we're talking about the yugas, it's a different word altogether, because it's using the different A's and the different I's. Now, this might seem very technical, but it's actually significant, because Kali Yuga is the age that we're in now, and it is referred to as the Iron Age. And so we have Satya Yuga as the Golden Age, Treta Yuga as the Silver Age, Dvapara Yuga as the Bronze Age, and Kali Yuga as the Iron Age. And this is important because the transition is generally not agreed on. There's not consensus. But my perception of it is that the transition goes directly from Kali Yuga to Satya Yuga. And Satya means truth in Sanskrit. So we're moving from the age of darkness, the age of debasement. And this is important because this is where we're at now. And many people are really querying what's going on in the world, and they're looking to different traditions, including obviously what's been said in the book of Revelation with the Bible, all these sorts of things to make understanding of prophecy, of wisdom, of ancient understanding of this turbulent time we're moving through. And really from the perspective of the yugas, from the perspective of consciousness, everything is going exactly to plan. Everything is going exactly the way it should. And as confronting as this may be, it's important to understand that the age of Kali is an age where virtue declines, where morality declines, where there is spiritual debasement, where there is chaos, where there is confusion, where there is turbulence. And this is exactly the time that we're living through now. And it's supposed to be this way. And what is happening now is actually an intensification of all of those qualities that we're seeing in the world, which in many ways it was actually going on for all of last century. People look at what's going on in start of 2020 and consider that to be very satanic in nature, and it is. But if we look back through history, we can see like some of the abuse of power by people like Stalin, Mao Zedong, Hitler, people like that, and many other actual dictators. And if we compare where we're at now, then it can be argued that the slaughtering of literally millions and millions and millions of people in China and Russia under the Russian Revolution, under Stalin and under Mao Zedong, then that hasn't actually occurred yet in this sphere of time which people are focusing on in this way, this turbulence. So the question therefore is, and then we can take into account World War I, World War II. I mean, the deaths in World War I were staggering even compared to World War II, actually. So that, when we consider it from that point of view, there really is, things are not as bad, it could be argued from one perspective, but I totally understand from another perspective, we could say they're much worse with the intention of what's happening with the elite, with things such as the Great Reset, with the medical mafia, with the tyranny, with the tracking, the loss of rights, liberties, freedoms that's occurring now. And the concern obviously is where is it's going, because the dictum history repeats, we can see it happening day by day, particularly in countries like Israel, which is extremely disturbing to see what's actually occurring there. But my point is that the events of Kali Yuga, when Kali Yuga is about to end, will intensify. So as far as the cosmic timetable goes, we're exactly on time to welcome in the Golden Age. Now, of course, amongst scholars, there's a lot of speculation as to when this will occur as a year. Now, in my view, this is not a correct way of thinking about it, because the cosmic plan is not structured in the same way as a clock, in the sense that when the clock strikes 12, we don't reset and then move directly into Satya Yuga. It means that there is a function of human consciousness that is having a direct impact on the speed in which the yugas change and the speed in which the transformation at a planetary level occurs. So this means that people trying to work this out mathematically just won't be able to. There is an approximation, and the approximation is the signs that are occurring, which is very much well noted by the Hopi prophecy and the Hopi tradition and many other cultures around the planet. So the signs are there, and it's obvious that we are in those days now. We really are. That's clear. But when we consider as to how it's going to play out in terms of months and years, well, there's a little bit still of the unknown factor there, which will be directly determined by human consciousness, by our individual role and our collective role in shifting the consciousness on this planet. Now, that means that as far as what's going on now in terms of individuals, whether they're politicians, business people, and all the satanic activity you see openly now occurring on the planet, I mean, they're really not even actually making it a secret anymore. That's actually all part of the plan. And that's something that, to understand at a karmic level, all those actors on the world stage that are doing all these things to enslave humanity and so on, they're actually doing exactly what they're supposed to do. And as perverse as it may sound, they actually have a divine warrant to do that. And this is actually part of the divine plan. Now, many people are assuming, therefore, that this will go on unchecked. But no, it's actually part of the divine plan to actually awaken humanity. And unbeknownst to these people who are basically completely perverted and who really don't understand what they're doing, they're actually doing the work of the divine. And when we look at this perspective, we can start to see that these karmic agents, if you want to think of it like that, they're really helping accelerate the process in a completely unexpected and, from their point of view, unconscious way. So the genius of what's actually happened from the divine will is that this agenda, this global agenda that really became, I guess, more obvious in 2020, was that this was all part of the plan to accelerate the introduction to Satya Yuga. Now, having said that, where a lot of people are going wrong, particularly in the New Age community, is that they think that they're going to somehow bypass the process of their own evolution, and specifically in terms of having the courage to speak out against abuses of human rights, against what is tyrannical, against these corporations, against the medical mafia. And it's based on the assumption that someone else is going to do the heavy lifting and speak out for people who think like this. Now, that may occur, but the problem actually is with that attitude is that there won't be that individual evolution which is necessary to make this quantum leap of consciousness. And this is where many people who are either too scared to do what they feel is right, or are simply burying their head in the sand from this New Age spiritual bypassing perspective, where I only focus on love and light. Well, there are major problems on the planet now, and they're obvious to everybody. But please tell me how you think that those problems are going to be fixed without being addressed. Because it comes with the idea that someone else will fix them, and someone else will take responsibility. And not only that, you're asking someone to take responsibility for you. And this is the great lesson of humanity in this very, very profound decade that we're living through. Now, we're still having this external savior myth program running, whether it's the aliens are coming to save us, whether it's Donald Trump coming to save us, whether it's the Q. This PSYOP is basically one of the most disempowering PSYOPs that I've seen yet, because it basically comes with a premise of not doing anything, not taking any personal responsibility, and not actually taking action to create positive change. Why? Because we're just all sitting at home being digital soldiers and trusting the plan. And this is working perfectly. And if you study history, you'll see Vladimir Lenin said this famous quote where he said, "The best way to control the opposition is to lead it ourselves." And there's a great wisdom in that, and it's something that many people who are experiencing cognitive dissonance in this awakening community need to really understand, that no one is coming to save us. And this is the fundamental lesson that we are all going through at a collective level, which is basically that at this level, what I call this level of the awakening, that there is going to be no saviour. There is no Gandalf the Great coming. There are no ETs coming to save us. There is no people from the inner earth coming to save us. There are no ascended masters. There is no benevolent politician. There are, however, 7 billion people on this planet, and it's literally being ruled by perhaps less than like 100,000, let's say. It's probably more like, 2,000, 10,000, who knows. But the point is that these attitudes are a state of disempowerment, and by buying into the idea that we can't make change ourselves is a continuation of this state of disempowerment. And this is something that we need to change collectively, because we can't create states of sovereignty at a collective level, of empowerment at a collective level, of self-rule, until we start to actually embody them ourselves, embrace them ourselves. And this is one of the fundamental lessons that we are going to have to learn individually at this decade. And it's going to be extremely confronting for people who are avoiding this or pretending that the cosmic law doesn't apply to them and so on. It's obvious that if there is a lesson for at a planetary level, that includes everyone at a planetary level in some way. So we all have a voice. We all have, a conscience, and it's time that we started to use that. And there are very, very clear signs now that this is starting to occur, and it really is a matter of critical mass. But when we consider what the awakening really is, and then we consider what this true leap of consciousness really is much, much more than just knowing what the latest agenda of the elite is. It's much more than just sitting there watching the various psyops unfold on the internet and all the misinformation that's continually peddled by these people who are a little bit delusional and or operatives And people who are basically, maybe they didn't get enough hugs as a kid, they just need attention. That is not what awakening is. It's not an awakening to understand the various agendas of the elite or the various plans that are unfolding here, whether it's the Great Reset or whatever. These things are very important, but that's not what the true awakening is. It's awakening of what I call at the lower levels. And this will only take you so far, because this is a game of consciousness. And by that, I'm referring to this quantum leap requires a genuine transformation. And this is the big lesson for people who are becoming awake and are basically just projecting all their anger and frustration into the world with this idea of people who are not awake are wrong, and also this opposition to the government. And it's basically just an expression of people's own hate. And this is a very common theme in the awakening community. It's not really what awakening is. And having said that, I'm not suggesting people remain ignorant of what's occurring either. Far from it. Far from it. Because it's very important to be aware of what's transpiring. But there is a difference between being aware and obsessing over all the noise. And if we're obsessing over the noise, we're perhaps losing contact with our own harmony, with our own inner stability. And this theme will be very prevalent in this decade of how can I remain still, focused, centered, balanced, and harmonious in the storm. And of course, that will be unique to everybody's journey. But to be engaged in the world, but to also be centered in our own harmony, in our own stillness, in our own peace, and not be shaken. Because the intensity of the end of Kali Yuga, going back to what I said before, will intensify in these next years. We can all see that. It's already, 2021 has already started in that way. And it will intensify. It needs to intensify, because it needs to intensify to bring it to a conclusion, to bring it to a close. And also it needs to intensify to wake up more people, at least in the lower levels of the awakening. Now, this is important because everyone now knows that there is something not right with this agenda that's rolling out with the pandemic. Even if you haven't researched into it, even if you haven't looked into it properly, even if you haven't become conscious of the bigger picture, in every heart of every person, at least in this country, in Australia, everybody knows that there is something not right about it. Even if they haven't even admitted to the other people, we all now know that there is something that is very devious, very malicious, and very wrong about what is occurring here in this country. And we can look at it at different levels. But this is a symptom, or actually it's an effect of the splitting consciousness, because not everybody is actually going to be able to admit that to other people, to express that consciousness, to actually really face the truth. And this is really what the splitting consciousness is between the 3D and the 5D. It's an aspect of it. It's a more tangible component of what is actually occurring. And this pandemic in this way is an opportunity, if we can see it clearly, for people to begin what I refer to as their true spiritual journey. And we've seen so many amazing people around Australia, around the world, start to stand up and speak out about what's going on. And they are doing fantastic work and fantastic service. Most of these people are not getting paid in any way. And it's really embodying some of the beautiful qualities of the heart, even if some of these people don't have a spiritual background and they don't have a spiritual path as perhaps they would relate to it. In many ways, they have much more of a spiritual path than much of the spiritual narcissism that you can see in various spiritual communities and various attitudes that many people have who may actually be doing spiritual practices, because they're actually coming from a place of being heart-centered and focusing on other people and being of service and being selfless. And all these qualities of the heart are actually really the seeds of the 5D shift. So this will show up for different people in different ways. You can't make huge sweeping statements and be judgmental in this way. But the main thing is to bring this love and to bring this positivity into whatever you feel called to do in this great shift, because everyone will have a different role. But people at this point, a huge section of people are choosing not to be engaged in the shift, and that's their choice. It's not right, it's not wrong, it's just a choice. But the choice will have effects, and to embody these frequencies that are coming onto the planet now, because the subtle reality of the planet has dramatically changed since 2012, since the end of the Mayan calendar, even prior to that actually, during 2012 itself. The subtle waves of energy are changing the consciousness of all humans now, but people who are more open to receive these waves of energy are experiencing a much more profound shift, faster evolution, a faster shift through basically being open to receive, being in this purer state. And this is one of the big themes of my book. So this important thing to understand is that everything actually is going to plan, and everything will go to plan, because unfortunately one of the qualities of Kali Yuga is this intensification of the ego that we can see is, worldwide at a global level. And the effect of this means that many people do not understand and trust the divine plan. This is not a Christian thing in such a way, but it's more a trust perhaps in the universe or in the creator or in this idea of a restoration of balance. Now, how far the pendulum is going to move before we start to see it move back the other way, it's up to us. It's up to us. Remember, we are consenting to this tyrannical rule on this planet now. Not everyone, but collectively we are consenting to it. We are allowing it. We are perpetuating it. And this is something that we really will need to change. And as I said before, the genius is that the satanic souls that have incarnated now, who have this in a completely inverted way, a divine mission, the plan that they are actually executing is perfect, because it's global in nature. It's affected everybody. They have everything in control, all the pieces on the board. That's politicians, scientists, doctors, police force, and not everybody, of course, but always the key people. If you look at it from this structure, this compartmentalized structure, it's always the key people. But what they actually don't understand, because they lack wisdom and discernment, is that they have created a plan which is going to see the complete collapse of the tyranny on this planet. But unfortunately, there will be a lot of suffering prior to that, which obviously is already occurring. And this is important to appreciate, because their plan, basically, in terms of the medical mafia, in terms of censorship, in terms of control, in terms of the Great Reset, collapse of financial system, all the various methods of control are simply the perfect storm for their demise. And they don't actually see that. And now, since the beginning of this pandemic, they're in a very, very dangerous situation where they actually now are basically having to reveal the agenda. And it's very confronting for people who are completely mind controlled, who are completely indoctrinated, to gradually start to see what's occurring here is completely satanic. And And at the same time, a lot of people have lost confidence, or perhaps need to develop more confidence in the power of the light. However that shows up with you, whether it's from a Christian point of view with the angels, or from the light, the positivity, the elevation of consciousness, the purity, however you relate to that, it is coming. And it is coming stronger and stronger. Mark my words. The subtle reality on this planet is changing. It is not moving like in a linear way. It comes in waves and then drops off. But it is changing. And there is a lot to actually be extremely positive about. But we do face great challenges. And because the challenges are so big collectively, they are also very significant individually for us to grow radically, which is another feature of the end of this Kali Yuga, this age of darkness, this iron age, the age of debasement, which means that the greater the problems, the greater the challenges, the greater the growth. And if we have the wisdom to view what we're going to go through and going through now like that, then our transformation will be swift. And it really is a question of tapping into our soul and our soul power as we move through this, because there is really a profound wisdom and a profound power in that, and to really celebrate what is coming, because the years ahead will be extremely challenging, particularly the next 3 to 4 years. We're already in the middle of it now, obviously, but the plan that they've created is a complete disaster. In fact, I got a little bit off topic actually in this energy forecast, but the medical mafia, the forcing of it, as I see it, is going to be a complete disaster. I mean, already all the signs are there that the uptake of the medication that's been introduced is not really going in any way to plan. And I'm not talking about the reactions to the medication or anything like that. I'm talking about the public attitude, the sentiment around that. And this will be the first of many stumbling blocks. And once one domino falls, they will fall faster and faster. And it really will be quite profound to see this occur. And this is what many of us actually incarnated to experience. So I guess there's a lot to say there. There's a lot to unpack at another time. But I just wanted to thank everyone for all the messages that they're sending me. I don't have any time to get back to those anymore, but thank you so much for all the messages and all the friend requests and everything. It's been really amazing to see so many people start to get interested in the topics that are relevant, and they will define our lifetime. The topics that are relevant now in the awakening community are going to define our lifetime, but I can't stress enough the real principles of what real awakening is. And significantly, even the word Buddha itself means awakened one. And that should say a lot to this process that we're going through. It's not necessarily understanding the agenda of the elite, or the latest intel, or the latest revelation that's coming out in wherever it is. It's way beyond that. It's way beyond that. But at the same time, if you're on a spiritual path, it doesn't mean avoiding social conscience, social responsibility, and starting to speak out for yourself, for your family, for your brothers and sisters around you, for future generations. And this is the lesson many people came to learn, is moving from a state from fear to love. And it's not worth anything, all those hours of yoga practice, of meditation, if they're not embodied and it's not in action, if it's not actually in the world. So that's everything from me. I've got plenty more to say, but I don't want to go for too long. Next retreat, Easter Yoga Meditation Retreat, 12th annual Easter Yoga Meditation Retreat at Springbrook in Queensland at Easter. Obviously, it's not annual because we didn't have it last year, but it's going ahead at Easter. There'll be lots more news for me with things to come throughout the year. Lots to say and lots to share. I haven't really made videos for a while now, but I've been working on a lot of other projects which will come to fruition soon. I wish everyone all the best through this time of deep change. It is quite, I know people are going through the roller coaster of emotions, and there is a lot to process, there's a lot to deal with, but I cannot stress enough that really our mental health, our well-being, our physical health is number one. Obviously our spiritual health, our spiritual motor, we've got a long way to go, and that's where I see a lot of people are losing heart because they're focusing too much on these ridiculous prophecies, on these fake channelers, on this new age nonsense, and not enough on actual, on the bigger picture, on cosmology, on what's really occurring at a planetary level, and also at the level of the solar system and beyond. And it's really a case of running the marathon, this is. And please stop listening to these false prophets, these fake gurus, because they're not helping you, and they're definitely not helping the collective. Any way that you can do any action and to support yourself through various practices, whatever it is, presence, mindfulness, tai chi, qigong, yoga, meditation, and keeping good health, good spirits, positive energy, so important right now, and it will serve us all each and every day. So thanks very much for watching. Stay tuned, plenty more to come. We live in epic times.